Okay, so this is My Delicate Taste, Aesthetic Deference Revisited by Iskra Fileva in Philosopher's Imprint, forthcoming. And yeah, as always, feel free to ask questions. Let me know. I'm reading it for the first time too. Like I said, I've met Iskra before. She was in grad school when I was an undergrad. Drop the music a little bit. So, introduction. In Rebecca West's novel, The Fountain Overflows, a young woman named Cordelia wants to become a violinist. Cordelia is studious but has no real musical talent. Cordelia has some success as a concert violinist, playing for an undiscriminating audience, thanks mainly to the fact that she is committed to pleasing her listeners by any means at her disposal. West writes, had the spirit of music appeared before her, it would have spanked her, for there was nothing, absolutely nothing in her performance except the desire to please. She would deform any sound or any group of sounds if she thought she could thereby please her audience's ear, and so bribe it to give her its attention and see how pretty she looked as she plays the violin. Cordelia's equally untalented teacher, Miss Beaver, however, has become persuaded that Cordelia is truly gifted. At one point, Miss Beaver arranges for Cordelia to have an audition with a famous violin teacher, Hans Fechter. Cordelia's mother, Claire, is very musical and a professional pianist. Protective of her daughter, the mother does not want Cordelia to go to Fechter because she fears Fechter will say something hurtful to her unmusical daughter. Miss Beaver is convinced and convinces Cordelia that Claire is simply not being a good mother. Teacher and student go to see Fechter. What happens next is just what the mother has expected. Fechter is angered by Cordelia's playing and says something cruel to her. He also tells Miss Beaver that people like her should be punished for encouraging students without a musical ear to try to make it as professional musicians. A reasonable person in Miss Beaver's place would conclude that Cordelia is not, after all, a musical genius. Miss Beaver may draw this conclusion simply on the ground that Fechter, who is more qualified to judge than Miss Beaver herself is, says so. I mean, people make mistakes. Just because someone is better than you at something doesn't mean they're always right. So you could conclude that someone who is like better than you at something is right, that you lack, the quality to be very good. That doesn't mean they're the last word though. So you could, take the expert's opinion, but there are more than one experts and they sometimes disagree. Sometimes, not always. There are things that basically all the experts do agree upon. Like there are, things of fact. Like, did you get, like, it's not like, do you think Plato was right? But like, did you get what Plato said correctly? It's like, well, if you can't even explain what Plato said, then it doesn't really matter that you think you're interpreting Plato correctly, because there's no way you're interpreting Plato correctly if you don't even know what he said. It's like, yeah. So you can be wrong, like objectively wrong, and not just wrong in like an opinion. But then there are things like you could be some people like different music, and so you can also do that and disagree there. All right, according to certain pessimist views about aesthetic testimony, Ms. Beaver should not change her judgment on Fechter's say-so. The pessimist claim is not that Ms. Beaver is permitted to stick to her own view, but she is required to do so. The thought is that she would be violating a norm on aesthetic belief formation if she defers. The most Ms. Beaver can permissibly do under the circumstances on such views is take Fechter's statement as input worth considering. The input may enable her to reassess her own reaction, but unless and until that happens, Ms. Beaver should not adopt the view that Cordelia's playing is artistically mediocre. Alright, so I guess the theory here is that if you think it's good, like your taste, you shouldn't revise your taste just because someone more knowledgeable than you says that it is bad. Like you can say like, I like my trashy art, and like you might not think it's trashy, but someone will be like, that's trashy. Well, you could say, well, I'll take your opinion under advisement. And even if they're like a professional critic, you'd be like, I take their opinion under advisement. That's kind of what I think is being said here. It's like, don't, just because they said so, that doesn't mean they're like 100% right. All right. Some pessimists also make also a corollary descriptive claim to the effect that we do not, as a matter of fact, defer to others on aesthetic matters. If that's right, then we should expect Miss Beaver won't change her judgment, whether or not she should. Yeah, that's true. It's like, if someone says this is great art, but you don't like it, you don't be like, well, okay, I'm wrong. You'd be like, I don't like it, and I don't think it's great. Now, that doesn't mean you understand all the things that they understand, but that doesn't necessarily make you wrong. It just means they disagree. Okay. DCI Banks, what's up? Thank you. I appreciate it, DCI. You know, like I was saying, I got my new emotes and like I'm already stressed. I'm like, let's just go stream and start whatever. But Frank says, so I appreciate you saying so, DCI. Frank says, if your taste is already based on an amalgam of other people's tastes already, then what harm in building in another person's taste? Well, that's the question. You may have some terrible, terrible instruction when you were younger, Frank. And maybe you have awful taste. And what's the harm is that you building in other people's stuff. It's like, well, maybe you should just toss out what you knew because you were wrong. So it's not just that you shouldn't build it in. Of course, you should take other opinions in. It's that maybe you do have to reject certain views that you have because they are terrible. DCI says, I used to love vegetables, went to school, saw kids be like yuck, and decide I wouldn't like vegetables. That's another thing. It's like, yeah, maybe the input you're getting is bad too. Now, the theory here is that you were talking to an expert and they're not going to be like idiot kids who don't like vegetables. But, I mean, that doesn't mean the expert isn't having a bad day. Like, people do make mistakes. So, yeah, you can already take in, like, you should be, like, you know, revising your opinion. But that doesn't mean there aren't other ways to revise the way things are. And you could just be wrong and be like, no, I was wrong. I shouldn't just take your opinion into account. I should take your opinion because it's the correct view. And, you know, this more or less happens when you find out you're objectively wrong. Ivan, what's going on? So it took you months to learn, like, Ivan, how you doing? What's going on? How is stream? Let's give Ivan a shout out. What's going on, everybody? What were you doing? I was lurking a stream earlier. You were talking about... Oh, I saw for like the few seconds I was there because I was kind of busy. But I saw you and Vipers arguing about the shape of the Earth because like Vipers apparently has a flat atlas and you have a round globe, and therefore Vipers is correct. Because Vipers is just generally correct, entitled to an opinion. Yes. Clearly, paper is superior to globes, but yeah. You got into a religious argument. Brian, random name. Yeah, welcome back. A flat atlas and a flat ass. Oh, I'm sorry about your flat ass, Vipers. I didn't know that. You always can see you don't normally see people from the back in a Twitch stream. Well, certain streams you see people from the back, but like not this stream. And most streams I'm in, you see people from the front. So I didn't see your flat ass. But okay. Yeah. Now, here's a question, Frank. Okay, yeah, so we're just reading paper on aesthetic disagreement here. What is it? When should you change your aesthetic appreciation? Like, when should you learn that, like, your opinion in music is terrible? Or should you ever just be like, it's terrible and move on? Like, is that a good idea or not? Like, or should you like, hey, no, I like what I like. I think certain music is good. And even if an expert tells me that the crap I like is crap, that doesn't mean they're right. Maybe they're wrong, and, you know, for whatever reason, they're just caught up in their little world. So, yeah. So what? Anything else going on in your stream? Tell me about how it went, Ivan. But, yeah. That's just what we started doing here. Frank, it took you months. You said, it took me months to learn to like coffee and years to learn to like beer. Yeah. But, okay, so here's the question then. People weren't telling you that, though. You just were learning more about it and trying it over and over and over again. That's not the same thing as having someone else tell you. Now, you can put more time and effort in and learn to appreciate something. Yeah, like you might not like certain forms of art, but you can learn to appreciate it and then maybe even like it once you understand what's going on. Like there's certain things Matisse did when he was older, the painter, Henri Matisse, and I thought they were dumb when I was younger. Then when I was older, I understood them better and I liked them a lot more. And so it's like sometimes you have to be in the right mindset. Yeah. Brian Random says guilty pleasures are a thing. Absolutely. But at least you know then that they're bad. The idea here is that you don't actually know that they're bad. You just think they're good. Viper's taste in art is impeccable. I believe it. Ivan Neal says a friend showed up to argue for Christianity, explain that evolution disproves design, even theistic evolution, so other arguments just do not interest me anymore. Okay. I'm sure they were convinced. Like that always convinces people. Viper says it was the Fredst of time, it was the Durst of times. Cryonics Forever says, boo, Matisse. You don't like, hey, Cryonics, what's up? You don't like Matisse? Matisse did some interesting stuff. Maddie says, what if that art was supported by the CIA as a way to push back against communism? Yeah, I mean, that was a thing that happened. Oh, you totally won them over. That's amazing. I don't even believe you. Matisse is overrated. Perfectly fine. Like, that's fine. Like, the stuff I was talking about, Matisse did these paper cutout things towards the end of his life when I don't think he could like paint as well, but he could still use scissors pretty well. And yeah, exactly, that happened. Jackson Pollock, yeah, you might not like all the things like the drip paintings and whatnot, but like what was I saying? Yeah, like there were these cutout things where he was cutting out like colored pieces of paper and, you know, gluing them onto like, you know, a canvas or whatever. And when I was younger, I did not think they were that interesting. When I got older, I was like, wait, they actually are kind of interesting. Yeah. Brian says, a stroll through the Tate Modern is a wild time. Actually learned to love JP over there. Cool. I don't know how to say Veris. Probably took me the longest to appreciate. See, that's the thing. People change opinions. You learn stuff, and you can learn to like things, and you can learn that, you know, what you liked in the past might not have been as good. And so, like, we do this. We definitely do this. But the idea that the author put forward, Fileva puts forward here, is that you like what you like, and why should you change what you like? Why is there ever a reason to change what you like? Because you know what happens if you start liking one thing, you might not like the old stuff as much as you used to. So I need to get myself over and see the Tate Modern. I like art. So, but these are the hard questions. Like, you do change your opinion. Sometimes you change it one way or the other, and then like other people like can affect that. Ivan says, I was disappointed when I visited the Chicago Contemporary Art Museum. It was basically curators trying to outdo each other. Yeah, that's one of the things that can happen, is that museums can give like curators like free reign to do what they want, and then it becomes more about the curation than the art. And so when it's done well, it's amazing because you get like this super interesting crafted experience with the art. When it's done badly, it sounds like what you got, where it just seems like people were doing it for like the value of just like moving stuff around in the museum. Brian says it helped that you were dating an art historian at the time. I haven't been thoroughly been won over to her favorite Rothko though. Rothko's super interesting. Like, you have to kind of see them in person, and I heard that you're not even supposed to see them. Like, when he did them in these like low lit rooms, so like you normally see them in like these sort of bright galleries. If you see them in a darker room, they take on like a different character, and like they're much cooler. And you had a same experience with that museum. You went with a good friend though, yeah. So it's like, yeah, Rothko, I understand what you mean, because I thought they were dumb at first. I was like, no point. But like, you have to get yourself in the right mindset when you're looking at them, and like then it makes a lot more sense what he's up to. Manny says, you might like the Nelson Atkins Museum. It has what I call mid-tier work, which I find more interesting in a lot of ways. It doesn't take itself seriously. They have these massive shuttlecocks out in front of their lawn. See, that's fun. Frank says, I absolutely buy someone telling me that updating my taste is arbitrary or meaningless, but to the same degree, prior taste were arbitrary and meaningless. Yeah, well, here's the thing. I stream philosophy, and I talk philosophy with people. I think a lot of people I talk to do not know the same amount of stuff I know in philosophy. It is just general fact about what I think. The idea that people tell me I'm wrong, I'm like, who are you to talk to me about what I'm talking about right here? Like, if you have a good reason, I will listen to you. I take you very seriously, but I'm not changing my mind just for any old person disagreeing with me on the internet. Like, the idea that I'm just going to disagree with people, like, I'm going to change my mind because someone disagrees with me on the internet, is like, that's not happening. You have to show me you know what you're talking about, and I take you seriously, and I will take everyone in chat seriously, but like, I don't just change my mind because people disagree with me. It's like, so I think what my ideas are kind of hard fought. Like, I have hard fought beliefs, and so they're not going to get rocked very easily. And so someone telling me something, it's like, I don't just update my beliefs. I have to evaluate what they say, and then I go back and I update. Yeah. Where were we? Viper says, I wonder if one reason our taste changes is that art is an identifier of where we're at in life. I think I agree with that. It is inevitable that we grow and look back at our former selves and cringe, so we want to rid ourselves of those identifiers also. Well, that'd be virtue signaling, but it definitely, you're going to learn different things when you get older, and so different art will talk to you at that point. But yeah, you could also virtue signal that you're like, oh, I like this fancy art because I have like good taste. Ivanio says they were competing to see who could push the boundary of what we call art. If there's so many great graphic artists around online, they were not represented all. Oh, I see. So they were trying to. I see what you're saying, Ivan. Yeah, they were trying to like show off in some sense. Manny says I 100% know that I know less philosophy than most people. I don't know that you do, but like. It's just when people tell me I'm wrong, it's like, why would I be wrong? Like, you have to explain that. It's like, just because someone disagrees with me is meaningless. Like, it really is. Like, I don't care that I disagree with you. Maybe that means I'm right because I've, like, put some more time and effort in to have a different opinion. So, like, the idea that, like, just disagreement is a good enough reason for anything. And a lot of people hold that, oh, someone disagrees with you, you should find out why and revise your opinion until you find out why. It's like, no, I'm not revising my opinion until I find out that they have a good reason for disagreeing with me. Brian's in Detroit now. Got to see all the Van Gogh on a tour at the DIA. Also not your favorite artist, but it was a Detroit something of art. But it was good to have the experience to see them for real. Yeah. Exactly. Like, you might not love them, but, like, it's cool. DCI says, shouldn't you change your mind because you're American? Rock flag and eagle, right? Absolutely. I mean, politics is definitely the reason to change your mind. Viper says he's going full New Yorker. Who do you think you're talking to, eh? Ivan says the outsider view will be that X is an amorphous blob, but the insider view is that there are myriad patterns and distinctions within X. Wait, what's that in regard to? Team Blob, yeah. Brian's on Team Blob. Brian feels that way about a lot of contemporary classical music. Just people try to make a statement and out to each other. Yeah. Detroit Institute of Art, a surprisingly top-notch museum. I'm not surprised. Detroit had a lot of money at a certain point with all the car industry that was going through it, and they were able to afford things. I don't know if it's that way anymore, but yeah, like Detroit has been a great city. It's, you know, gets crapped on a lot for good reason, but like it's had money and a lot of cool stuff in it. London's a fantastic place for museums, galleries. Well, yeah, they stole everybody's stuff. The Science and History Museum are like 2 full days long. Well, I'm in New York. If you want to go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Met, or the MoMA, you could spend like a week in all of them if you wanted to. And I mean each. Yeah. Oh, the Diego Rivera murals are quite something. Yeah, didn't he? Yeah, because he was a communist. He was making all these populist murals. It's great. There's been what's her name? Frida Kahlo stuff around too. Yeah. We stole it, but we let them come and see their stuff. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, English. Yeah. Yeah, destroy industry murals with all the workers. Yeah, because he was a proletariat, you know? Frida Kahlo, they had some of her stuff around here for various reasons recently, and she's so good too. Yeah, well, Kahlo and Diego Rivera were a couple on and off for a while. Yeah. All right, wait, have you continued the paper? No, I've not gotten any farther. We've been discussing a lot of stuff. Anyhow. Walk streaks, okay. For last time, we didn't steal it. We kept it safe while we were bombing the shit out of their country. Yeah, that's right, Vipers. Good job, British. Yeah, when Trotsky is the third wheel. Yeah. And what's fun about Trotsky and philosophy is Trotsky's secretary was a logician, Jan van Heijenoort. And I actually mentioned this about how he died in Aris's stream the other day to Vipers, saying Jan van Heijenoort was murdered in a murder-suicide by his fourth wife. And, like, so Jan van Heijenoort was in this little circle with Frida Kahlo, Diego Rivera, Trotsky, because he was, like, the private secretary to Trotsky for a while. And so this was, like, a whole thing. So there's actually a straight-up logician in that circle. If you look it up, like, you'll find out that, like, if you look up the, like, trials, he was called in front of, like, the U.S. government and stuff. So to talk on Trotsky is, like, sort of a fascinating history. The reason he got into logic was that Trotsky wrote something and claimed that, oh, this is something is logical, like this is the communist way is logical, and he tried to publish it, and they laughed at him because saying that like communism. This is seriously the most raids I've ever gotten in one day. Welcome, Raiders. Lumpy, how are you? Were you doing Minecraft? What was going on? How you been, Lumpy? Let's give Lumpy a shout out. Unless, Vipers, do you want to give Lumpy a shout out? See if Vipers will do it. It's amazing. I can, like, be like, hey, Mod, give Lumpy a shout out. Wee Potato Raid, how you doing, Lumpy? Were you building the Minecraft, buildings and stuffs? Yeah. Yeah. You are Minecrafting. How are your buildings comings? Anyone who doesn't know Lumpy Dragon Potato, Lumpy is a Minecraft streamer. He builds these like fantasy buildings, and so they're kind of fascinating, like, you know, grand things. And you know, it's fun, chill, and he's mostly just chatting along, you know, in the same sort of little circles that we're around in. He's also a PhD in like chemistry, so he's making like cool things during the week. So he builds chemistry during the week, and he builds buildings when he's streaming. Hey, Infernal. Oh, hey, and have good streams. Yeah. You still have what, blocks TCI Legos, the analog Minecraft? Yeah. Bye, off to stream. All right, love to see your face, Ann, but I'll give you a shout out in a minute or two. But yeah. Wait, did we give Lumpy a shout out? I don't even know. I can't even tell. Let's give a shout out Lumpy. See if it works. There we go. Okay, yeah, so if anyone doesn't know Lumpy, lovely guy, you can chat about whatever here. You were in the Lego magazine twice. Very impressive. Okay. Yeah, so cool. Yeah, stuff to do. Like, you can build stuff. My cousin likes the Legos. His mom was an architect, or is an architect. Cool. Okay, so what we're talking about for all the Raiders, and if you don't know me, I'm Noger or No Gray. We're talking about aesthetic taste and why should you ever change your mind about your aesthetics? Clearly, people do change their aesthetic taste over time, but if like an expert tells you you're wrong, should you be like, maybe I am wrong, or should you be like, yeah, screw you, I like what I like? That's the question. Like, some people like Minecraft. I don't like Minecraft. If like someone says, oh no, Minecraft is the greatest video game ever made, should I be like, well, Minecraft is the greatest video game ever made and I'm wrong? Well, I'd be like, nah, I just don't like that sort of thing. And it's like, I'm not changing my opinion about that. Tindarius does appear in random newspapers. He showed me a shot of him in a random newspaper once. Like, it's true. Yeah, Ivan, you know, I don't like jazz. Change your mind. Now, see, this is the thing. You can have, like, an abstract appreciation for it. You could, like, know that it's good art. You just don't have to like it. Now, the question is, if you did think it was bad art, and then someone tried to change your mind, like, what would that take? Too many notes, yes. Brian says, kind of what all the anecdotes point to. My biggest experience of change, growth, and taste have come from friends introducing you to things. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, but how does that work? Was it people who knew you that said you might like this, or someone who you didn't know who was an expert saying, no, you're wrong about what you like, and you don't understand it? Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. Not a philosophical argument. And so, even if someone might be right, that might not be the way to go about it. I wonder if Iskra will, the author will talk about that. It's like, because here's what it is. I mean, she's already getting into the philosophy. She would be violating a norm on aesthetic belief formation if she defers. So maybe like what the norm is, you should like things that like, you know, are told to you in a way that is like because it's for you and like in a way that like you will like. But if you are just told that you are like objectively wrong, that may be the wrong way to discuss art to begin with. Lumpy says the expert might be able to bring light in some aspect of a piece of art that untrained eye may have missed. Yeah. The theory here, though, is that, or the setup here is that this is just bad music. Like, it's just not good, not well done, no musical ear, and then the experts being like, no, that's just bad. And they're like, no, it's good. And the expert's just like, no. All right, Frank says, but what if we recommender has known 20 people who didn't like Minecraft, and all 20 cases, after pressed enough and they got person to play, they turned out to like the game very much. How much weight should the recommender give your denial? Recommender again could be wrong, but like, yeah, you know, maybe this person knows who will like it, but you should trust maybe that person if they can show that the previous 20 people were like you in some relevant way. Ivan says, seems like this might be an empirical question. Yes, it might be an empirical question in any one case. But the question is, what should you be doing if someone tells you you are wrong? Like, should you be like, well, I know what you're going to do is you're going to take that information and update Bayesian. Like, I'm saying, well, sometimes you could just be wrong, and maybe you have to, like, really reconsider more than just Bayesian updating would do. Because, like, people can do, like, wholesale changes, too. Like, and should you, reject it, saying, hey, look, even experts have bad days. Like, not everyone is right all the time. Yeah. More than Bayesian? Yeah, wow. That's the thing. Maybe there's other ways to update besides Bayesian reasoning, Ivan. Like, you don't have to be 100% Bayesian. You might be Bayesian most of the time, and then other times you find out, hey, look, no, I'm just rejecting your opinion because it's wrong. DCI says, sometimes it's better to say, hey, can you help me out in Minecraft, please, rather than, hey, come play, you will like it. This is the thing. What are the norms of aesthetic belief? Like right here, how should you get people to like art or certain things that they have not experienced before? What is it to make belief formation about art? It's like it might not be something you can tell. Maybe they have to experience it in the right way. And that might be what is interesting about this paper is that you can talk about how to actually, you know, change people's minds about stuff. Can I help you choose between X and Y? No. Okay. Yeah, so you should not defer. So basically we're saying some people just say do not defer to others we do not defer to others on aesthetic matters. Things of taste are up to you. So that's what they just are saying. Frank says, but if you learn to change people's minds too effectively, you become a monster. No, you just go into rhetoric or communications. You can be like, you know, politics. You go into propaganda. I mean, you could become a monster, but like you don't have to. I mean, there's people who are, you know, out there trying to do good in the world with their skills. Depends, like you can use your rhetoric skills for good or for evil, Frank. Like how bad, like you don't have to be a monster. You could, you know, use your like abilities persuasion of making the world a happier place. Like you can think of say religious figures swaying lots of people to like be more loving, like the good kind of religious like saints or whatever that have done good things. You might say they are very good at persuading people and to like a good end. If these people have ever existed, I don't know. Viper says, taste is purely subjective. No one can be wrong about art apart from those people who enjoy The Last Jedi. I have not seen The Last Jedi for good reason, I think. DCI says some art is objective. Like, I think there are definitely parts of art that are objective. Like I was saying, like, you can have opinions on Plato, but then you could just be wrong about what Plato said. And it's like, if you were just wrong about what he said, then your opinion about Plato is not an opinion about Plato anymore. It's an opinion about something else, but it's not Plato. So, like, that is objective. Now, then you can argue about was Plato right or was Plato correct in saying certain things? Like, maybe, but that's not, that's different. Brian says, if you start grooving to the Horst Wessel song, start rethinking your life. Yeah. Ivan says, actually, I think instrumental rationality is way more complex than epistemic. Investing hours in a practice aesthetic leads you to change your values. Satisfying values is difficult when you have a moving target. And Plato was not right. Yeah. Well, Plato may have been right about like one or two things. But maybe not all of it. But like, yeah, this is the thing. It's like how we actually do this sort of updating of our views is like super complicated, because if you ask people, how did you change your aesthetic views, you think anyone's gonna have an answer? Like, that's a hard question to answer. Okay. So why can't Ms. Beaver defer to Fechter's admittedly impolitely offered aesthetic testimony according to the pessimist? The answer is that on pessimist views, other people's aesthetic judgments cannot be a legitimate basis for our own. Opinions differ regarding the details here. Some argue that aesthetic testimony provides no justification, or more carefully, it provides justification for probabilistic judgments only, not for belief or full knowledge. Okay, so this is what we were just saying. Testimony is not provides no justification for aesthetics. That's one opinion. Yeah. Issue 1 wrong, issue 2 right. Yeah, stop arguing about the numbers. And Ivan insists that belief is probabilistic. Okay, I mean, you can define it that way. I mean, have you ever gone and found me a belief out in the world and we can like poke at it and be like, hey, are you probabilistic? Go find me a belief. So we can poke at it and see what it's made out of. And if it's made out of probabilities, then you're right. So others argue that while testimony may furnish an adequate epistemic ground for aesthetic beliefs, it is nonetheless inappropriate to rely solely on testimony informing beliefs concerning aesthetic matters. So yeah, you can say something, but it's not enough. It's something, but not sufficient. Robert Hopkins calls the first flavor of pessimism unavailability pessimism, and the second unusability pessimism. The idea behind the second kind of pessimism is that there's some non-epistemic norm that constrains aesthetic belief formation. Yeah, and this is what people were saying. What were you finding? Okay, so this is a song or something that we should never be grooving to. Oh, the article about the festival. Oh yeah, so you can go find Tindarios in a random article. And Tindarios, you can look, is there. And Tindarios can point himself out if he wants to, but he is in that crowd. Oh, is this the article or you getting quoted in the article? Okay, well, Tindarios, feel free to elaborate. Oh, okay, so this is the article about the festival where you were quoted. Incorrectly quoted, as I recall, you said. Ivan says, I mean, I can believe in the Chicago Cubs without believing it likely they will win, but there are two meanings of belief here. Yeah, that's fine. But that's the thing. So you can break down certain things and be like, well, then there are probabilistic beliefs. Like I think it was just in terms of baseball, we had, the U.S. versus Japan, and there were odds that betting people could put on it. And you could treat each of those like how the exact way people were thinking who was going to win with what amount of chance, and you could call that credence. We call that in philosophy credence, degree of belief, and then you can put a probabilistic number on that, and people do that. Now, is that like the right thing to be doing in terms of philosophy? I don't know, but like people definitely do it, and so like, is that what a belief is, or is that one concept of what we do in parts of our like how we understand the world? Sure. Now, like, if you want to define all of belief that way, you'd be wrong, but that's definitely one thing people do. Viper says, I don't believe in the Chicago Cubs. I'm an A-cubist. Yeah. And Picasso just rolled over in his grave. Okay, so... yeah, so this is the unusability pessimism. So, like, if you just tell somebody that it's bad, they can't use that. What's just being told something's bad gonna do? No, they can't use it for anything. Must be a Southsider on their way to guaranteed rate field. Oh God, yeah, they were renaming like classic fields. Okay, the idea behind the second kind of pessimism is that there is some non-epistemic norm that constrains aesthetic belief formation. Deference to other people's judgments is said to violate that norm. Finally, it is claimed that there is an asymmetry of sorts between aesthetic and non-aesthetic testimony, so that, while deference to non-aesthetic testimony is perfectly kosher, deference to aesthetic testimony is not. Yeah, okay, fine. Like, you can take someone's word for it, but that's not normally how we judge the world when it comes to aesthetic taste. If someone says it's beautiful, you say, okay, I'll take your word for it, but then you find it and like you're like, that's ugly, it's not beautiful, you're not going to take their word for it anymore. Lumpy also rolled over in his grave. Okay. That's very impressive that you were able to do so and be in Twitch chat at the same time. The pessimist case concerns what we may call pure aesthetic testimony that's problematic. That is, testimony concerning the aesthetic evaluation of an object, not its descriptive properties. Yeah, so this is the objective-subjective thing I was talking about earlier with Plato. Like, are you just getting the facts about what was said wrong? That'd be a descriptive property. It's the power of maple syrup. Yes. Who was I talking to the other day that we were saying, I was saying that Canada has the only strategic reserve of maple syrup in the world, and they had to tap it last year or something because there was a maple syrup shortage, and like they were trying to stabilize the price of it. Pink Lady, what's up? Good night. Good night. How you doing? Hope you're well. Yeah. So pure testimony so Pink Lady, welcome in. We're talking about what is it to change your mind when it comes to aesthetics. Okay, pure testimony can be contrasted with what we may call impure testimony. The latter may contain aesthetic evaluation, but it will also contain descriptive information relevant to the evaluation. In the limiting case, there is so much descriptive information conveyed that I may, after hearing your impure testimony, make a judgment solely on the basis of the descriptive information you have transmitted to me. This is a case of reliance on impure testimony. Yeah. So basically, like, here's the thing. Like, let me throw my little duck rabbit in chat for a sec. I could start describing the way to look at this. Like, okay, there's the duck's beak, and this is like the duck's eye facing like this way, and then. Thanks for the lurk, Lumpy. And then you could also say, well, there's the bunny. These are the bunny ears. This is the bunny foot, which used to be the rabbit tail. I mean, not the duck tail is now the rabbit's foot. And so you can describe a piece of art, but then all of a sudden you're getting different ideas, and so you're doing something different. You're not just saying it's pretty. You're giving a picture, like a picture using words of what the thing looks like, and that's this impure testimony. In defending their position, pessimists appeal to cases meant to elicit pessimist intuitions. Consider this case courtesy of T. Wynn. Let's see what Vipers has to say. Vipers says, to me, this is another example of philosophers overthinking things. Our taste changes because we get bored, and what replace our old taste with is indeed influenced by experts, because when it comes to subjective taste, everyone's an expert. Tell you the truth, we barely have gotten into this paper. I don't know where we're going to go with this. Evolve Yourself. How are we doing? How are you doing, Evolve Yourself? Now, this is actually a great, it looks so weird when you look at both at the same time. Yes, it does, Tendarius. Evolve Yourself. How you doing? Now, we are talking about aesthetic taste and what it means to get a testimony about aesthetic taste. Now, by the way, Evolve Yourself is a wonderful streamer. Everyone should go give Evolve Yourself a follow. I see that you're using some of my BTTV emotes right there. We've got the thing. But what's really interesting is I just got myself some new ones. I just got these myself. So, Eudaimonia, welcome in. Thank you for loving my stream. Appreciate that. So I'm working on these emotes. I have these now, and I will start using them to rate papers. So, like, so far, we could say, what's going on here? This has aesthetic content. Like, this is about art, and it's interesting in that stuff. So we could say, this is sort of, you get one scream here. So you could use like a scream emote to show that, hey, look, this has like sort of existential aesthetic content. And that's what the scream emote would be used for. But yeah, what was I going to say? So we're talking about changing aesthetic taste. And should you take an expert's word on what is good or bad? So, for example, Evolve Yourself has terrible taste in pizza, and I tell him this all the time, and he does not take my expert New Yorker opinion as fact. And this is an exact example here where there's an expert telling someone that they have terrible taste in music, and they don't listen to him even though they have terrible taste in music. This is the exact same setup where I tell Evolve Yourself, who's from Chicago, that he has terrible taste in pizza, and he refuses to change his mind. So, and now we've started the pizza wars again. Yeah, so you've got the rating system, yay and nay. Well, I was thinking about using the yays and nays, but I wanted something more fine grained. So like for this paper, you're gonna use the little scream emote. The little scream emote is going to say something has a certain kind of content, and this would be aesthetic. Existential content, and so the scream emote is more aligned with this. Now you could still say yay, of course, and say yay is good, but like that's just a thumbs up, thumbs down. This is my emotes are meant to bring out specific philosophy topics. New York pizza is ketchup on cardboard, so there. Oh wow, I must update my opinions of New York pizza because clearly you know what you're talking about. Shucks. So. Yeah, hope you're well, Evolve Yourself. Besides that stuff, hope things are going good. Yeah, well, Lumpling, we have our buddy Evolve Yourself is in chat. Oh, anyone who doesn't know Evolve Yourself, he does mind, metaphysics, philosophy of science, but he's a chess instructor, so you get chess content on stream, but he really, most of his content is a little bit of chess, and then he does guided meditations. So, like, if you want to get a more of a full body workout, like a mind, body, soul thing, go head over there and you can, do some chakra balancing and, like, meditation. But, like, yeah, he's from Chicago, and so he's got these very, 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 very wrong thoughts about pizza. Like, he does not understand. So that's, it's unfortunate, but, like, he just, he is where he's from. Yeah, but Vipers, should we defer to experts' opinions on art? Looks at the Academy Award Best Picture winners. Yeah, no, you're deferring. The Best Pictures is the that like association that picks them. You should look at who's picking them. Are they award like those are not like high quality people? It's like all that politics goes into it. Tinderos gives this paper a 16. Well, he gives it a nice rating so far to be more precise. Yes, it's just very nice. Yes, exactly. He thinks casserole is pizza. That is his exact problem, Lumpling. See, Lumpling knows what they're talking about. Lumpling, if you don't know, rated us earlier. Well, let's give Lumpling another little shout out. Lumpling is a cooking streamer. And so if you want to go see Lumpling baking stuff or making, what was it? Quesadillas today. That's what happened on Lumpling's stream. I had a watermelon pizza emote while I was subscribed to this music streamer recently. My sub expired, and I have to go basically beg for another one. Don't want to give out. I don't have enough money to go support all the streamers I like, but like, yeah. So, anywho, yes, there are problems with people's pizza taste. I'll just leave it there for now. It's not easy to make New York pizza. It is hard. And like I've heard different theories on why you can't make it at home. Like you actually have to let the dough sit for a certain amount of time because like the people who get the dough in, usually they let it sit for like 36 hours. And like if you make it at like that time, so that there's something like the time turnover in pizza places that actually makes the crust a certain way. You have to work on your own sauce. It's like, and then get the mix of cheese right. Like apparently the right mix of cheese is very important. So it's not so easy. Viper says, my point was a stealth point that even critical consensus changes over time. So if experts think something we like sucks, maybe we just wait. Well, I agree with that. Like that's what I was saying. Experts make mistakes. Like they are of a time period, and so you can say, well, maybe the expert has a point, but maybe they don't. Maybe I'm just like in a minority that will come back into the majority at some other point, and then they will recognize that. Like for example, there's an artist called Gustave Courbet who did landscapes. Or was it a Caillebotte? I forget. There's Courbet or Caillebotte. Courbet, I think, he did different things, but his landscapes, I really like them. And I was talking to like an art history PhD or something, and he was saying it's not well liked. I was like, well, I don't care. They're better than everyone else's. I don't give a shit what the art history says. It's going to come back into vogue. Now, was I being an asshole? Yes. Does he know more about the subject than I do? Yes. I don't care. I like every time I see his landscapes, I'm like, these are fucking great. And like I can explain why sometimes too. Like I do know something. I'm not like just making shit up. But yeah, it's like that's a good point that things change over time and things are fads even in the art world. Yeah. If it's not from New York, it's just sparkling flat cheese. That's unfair. There is also like pizza from Italy. Home cooks don't use enough wood pulp. Yeah. Nutella pizza and is it a coincidence that pizza slices are triangles? Cryonics asks. Yes, it's the Illuminati. That's what it is. All right, so going through this extremely slowly, but I do appreciate the conversation. All right, so quote. Suppose that I have never seen Van Gogh's irises for myself, but my art teacher tells me that it's an extraordinarily beautiful painting. Intuitively, something seems to have gone wrong if I were simply to acquire, on the basis of testimony and testimony alone, the belief that Van Gogh's irises is a very beautiful painting. All right, so end quote. I mean, why? You don't, like, I guess there's a difference here between, like, the, knowing that something is and then actually experiencing it. And so it's like, what do you actually mean when you say it's beautiful at that point? It's like, well, I was informed of the fact that, as opposed to actually thinking so myself, coming to have generated the idea. But that doesn't say that's like entirely wrong. Author says, perhaps the reader shares the view that something would have gone wrong if a person relies on her teacher's testimony in such a case. Anyone who has this intuition is likely to have some sympathy with the pessimist view. Moreover, pessimists do not simply rely on intuition about cases. They have offered arguments. I think pessimists of both unavailability and unusability persuasion are mistaken. That is, testimony, as the case of Miss Beaver suggests, provides a perfectly good ground epistemically for aesthetic belief. It also provides an appropriate ground for aesthetic belief. But I think also that pessimist intuitions ought to be taken seriously. We need an account of their force. In what follows, I have two aims: defend a version of optimism and to shed new light on the pull of pessimistic intuitions. Okay, so this is why one of the reasons I like this author is she just lays out what she's going to say. She doesn't... she's like, I disagree with these people. You can take someone's word for it, and that's perfectly fine, and I'll tell you why you might like the other people, but they're still wrong. Ivan says, right, I might cite the painting as beautiful in rhetoric, but wouldn't believe it actually beautiful to me. Yeah, this is the thing. And there's definitely something to be said about, like, what in theory it is versus in practice it is. The author here seems to suggest saying, no, that, like, you can do this, at least in part. Brian Random Name says, it seems like where you should go is the expert saying this is great, especially if they have things to say about why, won't make you immediately think it's great, but you may be inspired to take a second look with a new perspective. That sounds like a very plausible way to go, Brian. It's like if you didn't really understand how to look at it, so you were just sort of evaluating the art because you were looking at the wrong thing. And that's why I do like my little duck rabbit here. It's like if someone doesn't see the duck, you can explain to them what to look at. And that's sort of the thing. Like you can explain, look at the duck, look at this part, and you can see that like the duck face is this way and the duck tail is that way. And if they didn't see the rabbit, you can say about the different things. And the art, and like someone could explain to you why this painting is so great. Rabbit duck, it's duck rabbit. Yeah. So, author says, on the type of optimism I wish to defend, the aesthetic testimony case is like the case of expert testimony, and unlike that testimony involving ordinary matters such as the weather. We have a good reason to defer to the testimony of people more qualified to judge than we are, but no good reason to rely on a randomly chosen person. Yeah, this is why I don't care what people on the internet say, like random people on the internet say. I don't care if they disagree with me, but if someone can explain that they know what they're talking about, I take them seriously. This optimism is both more and less ambitious than optimism with regard to regular testimony. I take it that in the ordinary case, we think we have a good reason to rely on the testimony of a randomly chosen person, but no good reason to defer to that person's judgment when we have access to the evidence ourselves. For example, I believe you when you tell me it's raining, but if I look out the window and see it's not raining, I will believe my eyes. Ivan Neo says, I read Walter Isaacson's big book on Leonardo da Vinci, but still think Leonardo's paintings are awful. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. The duck season, rabbit season, duck season, rabbit season, fire, boom. Yeah, so that's the classic Looney Tunes. You know, I tried getting that for like as a clip in my stream. It turns out that's under copyright, and so like if you play that, you get DMCA'd really quick. So I don't play that. I wanted to play that, and I realized I should not play that because I will lose my stream. On the optimism about aesthetic testimony I wish to defend, by contrast, there is no good reason to rely on a randomly chosen person when we don't have direct access to the evidence, so this optimism is less ambitious in scope. However, once we've identified someone more qualified to judge than we are, we can defer to that person, even if we ourselves are inclined to make a different judgment, so that the optimism is more ambitious in degree. Thus, a version of the asymmetry thesis turns out to be true. Aesthetic testimony is parallel to expert testimony, but there is an asymmetry between it and regular testimony. Well, I don't know if my use would have been fair, Brian. I would have been using it just for shits and giggles. Maybe it's fair use. I don't know. Like, that was not one of the ones I wanted to. Like, you don't fuck with Disney. Like, you don't fuck with like some of these big companies. That was not worth me trying to find out. Like the clips I have for The Raid. Now, those are movie clips, but like those are old movies at this point. No one is coming after me for using a clip of King of New York. So, if I were to use something from like, oh, I will tell you, if you gift a sub and you do the gift a sub video, I get taken down for that, because that was from John Wick, and that's still current, and so, or it was as of like last year or something, and I will get a not a DMCA strike, but it mutes my video for that period. So like the old clips I use, no, the John Wick from just a few years back, yes, that does get flagged. So, like, it matters. Okay, for present purposes, this brief characterization of the view I champion suffices. The question is whether this variety of optimism can be refuted. I argue that it cannot be, not with the arguments given by pessimists so far. Okay, so Iskra, the author, is going to say, hey, look, you can take people's word for it when it comes to beauty, sometimes. Two qualifications are in order before I proceed any further. First, I will assume that at least sometimes we have good reason to think that another person's aesthetic judgment is more likely to be correct than our own. Ms. Beaver, for my example, has just such a reason. Because people who weren't here, Ms. Beaver went to a very famous musician who really knew what they were doing in music. She was just a music instructor and not like a famous musician. Second, author says, I will focus on what one is warranted in believing, not on what one is warranted in asserting. Okay, so you can believe it, but not necessarily have right to propound the belief. So if you're not warranted in asserting it, it's just you can believe it. You might not then pass on that knowledge though. The norms governing assertion have to do with various pragmatic implications. For instance, an assertion such as painting X is beautiful generally implies that you have seen the painting. And if you exclaim, painting X is beautiful, that may imply that looking at the painting gives you aesthetic pleasure. If you've seen the painting and think it is beautiful, but the beauty is of a sort that leaves you utterly cold, your exclamation would be misleading. There is a separate question of whether the pragmatic norms of assertion can be used to ground pessimism about aesthetic testimony, as some have argued. I don't think so. The issue deserves a longer discussion, but briefly consider the following. Instead of saying Cordelia's playing is technically proficient but artistically mediocre, which may sound misleading, Ms. Beaver says Hans Fechter says that Cordelia's playing is technically proficient but artistically mediocre, and I believe him. There is nothing intuitively problematic about this latter assertion, despite the fact that it contains an endorsement of another person's testimony. Yeah. In addressing my two tests, I proceed as follows. I begin with what I take to be the strongest argument for pessimism in Section 2, and I argue that none of them succeeds against the variety of optimism just outlined. I then take up the issue of pessimistic intuitions and their intuitive force in 3, and conclude in Section 4. I summarize the results and bring up some residual issues. Okay, so now we're going to go over why people think you can't take someone's word for a belief, and the author is going to disagree with them. The acquaintance principle, arguments for pessimism and their shortcomings. One popular motivation against reliance on aesthetic testimony has to do with sympathy with what Richard Wollheim called the acquaintance principle. Quote, which insists that judgment of aesthetic value, unlike judgments of moral knowledge, must be based on first-hand experience of their object and are not, except within very narrow limits, transmissible from one person to another. Yeah, so this is just saying you had to go see the thing yourself, basically, if it's like a work of art, or you had to listen to that song to say that was a great song. As Hopkins notes, the principle can be interpreted in purely epistemic terms. On this interpretation, it lends support to the unavailability pessimism. It says that we cannot acquire knowledge on the basis of testimony because aesthetic knowledge requires first-hand experience of the properties known, or it can be interpreted in non-epistemic terms as a norm that places constraints on the type of evidence it is appropriate to use in forming aesthetic beliefs. Yeah, so you need to go you have to go do it, or it's only appropriate under certain circumstances. On the second interpretation, knowledge without acquaintance is possible, but it should not be sought or acquired. This reading of the principle underwrites unusability pessimism. Yeah, so basically, you have to go see the thing for yourself. You have to listen to the music yourself, otherwise you can't call it beauty or beautiful. The acquaintance principle has some intuitive pull. Is it true? The first point I wish to note is that there is a plausible construal of aesthetic judgment on which only conclusions based on one's own assessment of the aesthetic properties of an object count as aesthetic judgments. Something like this construal, call it the narrow construal, can be given of judgments in general. Consider perceptual judgments on the narrow reading. Nothing counts as a perceptual judgment unless it is based on one's own perceptual evidence. Thus, a conclusion to the effect that it is raining is not a perceptual judgment on this understanding if it is based on another person's testimony. I suspect that part of the intuitive force behind the acquaintance principle comes from the possibility of construing judgment in this narrow sense. The narrow construal, however, while it might lend plausibility to Wollheim's proposal, is not, in the end, what he has in mind. For note in the passage, he uses judgment and knowledge synonymously, claiming that neither is generally transmissible from person to person. Thus, his pessimism is ultimately pessimism either about the transmissibility of judgments in a broader sense, that is, transmissibility of aesthetic knowledge or beliefs. Does Wollheim's principle stand up to scrutiny? Yeah, see, all of a sudden you'd be like, I can tell you something, you don't have to believe me, but I can definitely transmit it. So that's the thing. Can you transmit like aesthetic knowledge? It's like the answer is going to be yes. Now, can you transmit something like the perceptual experience, what it is to look at the painting? That's going to be harder, but maybe Iskra, the author here, is going to say yeah too. Alright, the first thing I wish to note is that certain kinds of aesthetic judgments are quite obviously possible without acquaintance. For instance, I can hold a justified belief on the basis of my general knowledge of the world that there are great poems written in Chinese, although I have never read any of them. Perhaps proponents of the principle can stipulate that the principle applies only to judgments about particular objects. If that's what pessimists who endorse the acquaintance principle wish to say, they owe us an explanation of the difference between judgments about classes of aesthetic objects, such as poems written in Chinese, and judgments about particular objects. Yeah, because, like, you can know in general that, like, you know, there's great art that you've never seen. That's not a hard thing to say. There's plenty of great art that I have not seen, by definition. I know that exists. Other philosophers have given a different reason for resisting the acquaintance principle. It has to do with the undisputed appropriateness of reliance on evidence such as photographs or recordings. Leitz notes, for instance, that it would be perfectly acceptable to conclude that Audrey Hepburn was beautiful on the basis of a photograph. This response applies to both the epistemic and non-epistemic interpretation of the principle. A photograph makes knowledge of Hepburn's beauty available to us, and there's nothing inappropriate in making use of this knowledge. I mean, yeah, you're not actually seeing Audrey Hepburn. She's not around anymore. Leitz's challenge succeeds so far as it goes, but a photograph functions in a way analogous to that in which purely descriptive rather than evaluative testimony functions. It only directly transmits descriptive information. Yeah, you're saying, well, look at the shapes. You're showing parts that are important, which is like the duck rabbit or the rabbit duck, as Frank likes to say. And that's different from like me telling you that it's something that looks two different ways. You can look at it like a duck or looking at it like a rabbit. That's not very descriptive. But if I show you the duck rabbit, that's a different thing. Yeah, so only transmit Team Hedy Lamarr, always Team Lamar. Yeah. However, pessimists about aesthetic testimony need not be pessimists about testimony concerning descriptive information. In order to accommodate this observation, the proponents of the acquaintance principle can adopt a modified version of the thesis which allows reliance on descriptive information acquired by testimony and means other than acquaintance. On this modified version, an aesthetic judgment must be based on one's own grasp of the aesthetic grounds for a given evaluation. The judgment, Audrey Hepburn is beautiful, that I make on the basis of a photograph counts. I think it is precisely such a suitable modified version that Hopkins means to capture when he calls the requirement for aesthetic matters. Having the right to an aesthetic belief requires one to grasp the aesthetic grounds for it. Okay, so that means for the music you have to understand something about why the music is interesting. For a photo or a person, you have to see why they are beautiful, like if you're saying they are physically beautiful. Yeah, Team Lamar, sure. Arguably, the requirement is preferable to the acquaintance principle. This is because it helps make sense of our intuitions about cases such as relying on photographs or recordings. Yeah, because if it's a recording, is it the actual music playing? But it's not going to be exactly. It's going to be compressed. It's going to be different. It's not the exact thing. So that's a good point. How far off from the actual thing can it be to learn something about the actual thing? Like a photograph is of a beautiful person is not the person, and it's different. How far off can it be? Can you get more and more abstractions away? Maybe you can still see what's beautiful about the person. Like if you get an abstract painting of them, maybe it's still beautiful and you understand something about the person, but it doesn't even look like them anymore. So there's a point there. But that's what the requirement here is saying. You have the right, because you can grasp the aesthetic grounds for it. Something is still coming through about the actual object that it's meant to represent in this case. Okay, so Hopkins' requirement, unfortunately, fares no better than the acquaintance principle when it comes to making sense of general statements such as, there are good poems written in Chinese, but I haven't read any of them. Even so, the proponent of the requirement need not fold, since the move we made in responding on behalf of the proponent of the acquaintance principle is open here too. We can say that the requirement applies only to judgments about particular aesthetic objects. Thus, even if the requirement fares no better than the acquaintance principle when it comes to accounting for the possibility of general claims not based on first-hand experience, it also fares no worse, and it clearly fares better with respect to the photograph case and others like it. So overall, we can grant that the requirement is preferable to the acquaintance principle. The question, though, is whether the requirement is preferable to optimism of the sort I champion. Why? I think it is. Ivan says, appreciating great art is considered by many to be a virtue, so there must be some cases where simply knowing that a piece of art is considered great will impart some aesthetic value to it, independent of how one feels about art in a vacuum. So what's going on in that? That's interesting. Are we talking about some sort of social information that's being transmitted when we talk about great art? This is what people find to be great art, and so knowing that people find it mean there's something that have to do with people that like it a lot. Now, again, this would be the next step up from saying fads, an art fad. Okay, a lot of people over a lot of time think this is what that fits with John Dewey would say. Interesting. But so you're using a consensus model. You're not just saying the expert thinks so. You're thinking, okay, there's a consensus across time, space, and experts. And so there's something there that many people agree. And so even if there are disagreements, the disagreements are not that significant to say that it's not a good piece of art. It's still a good piece of art, but different people believe so. Okay, so that's interesting. But I guess what we're transmitting is some sort of social information about people at that point. Yeah. Brian Random Name says art is great in how it allows experience, individually or culturally, to be transformed in a positive direction, which is more possible if people know that art is well than if they don't. So you're saying you can be primed. Yeah, there's definitely something there. You have to, but again, this is the description of it is helping in appreciating the art. So this is sort of explaining how to view it. That's if you know that this is great art, people think so, you might put more effort in. Now, is that actually telling you anything about the art, or is that telling you something about your responsibility to the art? Ivan says, I might have an aesthetic preference for great art as a social project. Yes, that's the thing. I think this is more telling us how you have to approach the art, though. It's not telling you so much about the aesthetic experience, that it's that you have to be sort of responsible in putting the effort in, because maybe you don't get it the first time, but if you put the effort in, you will appreciate it. Because so many people think so that there has to be something there. Dewey would say the two things go together. The art does not stand alone outside the experience of it. Fair. But why is that? What is the value in it then? That if the art is in the experience of it, what is the value there? And why can't the experience be transmitted in some other way? Like, that's what the question is here. Why is it pinned to that unique piece of art? Why can't we transmit the information or the beauty or whatever in some other way? Why not? Like, that's the question Iskra is asking here. Can we transmit beauty, whatever else like you can get from art in some other way than just actually in the one way that it is done in that piece? Can I describe beauty in some other way? And, we have described beauty in other ways. So it seems like there is a way to do it. All right, Hopkins' requirement versus optimism. It has been argued that a principle along the lines of the requirement, that is, one mandating that we base aesthetic judgments on our own evaluation of aesthetic properties, has the following implausible implication. We cannot rely on memory in many instances in which clearly we can so rely. What? We cannot rely on memory in many instances in which clearly we can so rely. Oh, I don't understand what this... See, they're going to have to explain this. Consider this. I read Stendhal's The Red and Black 30 years ago. I remember almost nothing about it, but I do remember concluding that it was a good novel. According to the memory argument, I can maintain my belief that the novel is good. Okay, so even if you've forgotten that you liked a painting, you can still say it's good. The memory argument for optimism raises interesting problems, but it is not the argument on which I wish to rely in making my own case. This is for two reasons. First, a pessimist can, when confronted with this argument, simply say that when we no longer remember enough of the relevant descriptive information, we are not entitled to the evaluative judgment based on that information either. Yeah, so once you forgot the relevant stuff, you may remember facts about what you thought. That doesn't make you right back in the day. You may have been wrong back in the day. Second, even if we say that one can rely on stored beliefs about aesthetic properties, it is unclear that such reliance is incompatible with versions of the requirement in the way reliance on others' testimony is. The unavailability pessimist can argue that all my memory does in such cases is transmit justification that I acquired previously through my own first-person experience. The unusability pessimist, on the other hand, can claim that norms of use license relying on one's own memories, but not on other people's testimony. Yeah, so you can say, look, I'm not so different from when I was. I don't remember exactly what it looked like, but I remember liking it, and I'm sure my opinions haven't changed significantly enough that, I'll still like it this time. Okay, so if not the memory argument, then what? In addressing this question, I wish to approach the issue from the other side and ask why reliance on aesthetic testimony is, according to the pessimist, distinctly problematic. If no good reason can be articulated, then all we have is reliance on intuitions. But as noted at the start, while we can elicit pessimist intuitions about cases, we can also elicit optimist ones, so the best case scenario for the pessimist relying solely on intuitions would be a stalemate. The optimist can score a victory if she can offer an account that accommodates pessimist intuitions, which is what I intend to do. Can the pessimist give an adequate explanation of the relevant difference between kinds of testimony? Yeah, so it's like your own testimony from memory versus someone else telling you that it's good. And you can think of it this way. I like certain foods. I could tell you should go try a certain food. And you might be like, hell no, that sounds nasty. It's like, okay, but then you could say, all right, I remember eating this food, but then you can think, well, hell no, that looks nasty now. So it's like, why is that so different? Now, just because you liked it in the past doesn't mean you're going to like it now, though. Okay, consider a possible explanation. Aesthetic judgments and beliefs, it can be claimed, can only be properly based on sentiment. All right, so now we're getting some new thing in, sentiment. The unavailability pessimist can argue that you lack justification and unusability, and the unusability pessimist that you lack some sort of non-epistemic entitlement to the belief that some object is beautiful if said object has never given you aesthetic sentiments of the right sort. So you have to have the aesthetic sentiment. And a sentiment, I guess, here would be a state of mind. So if you have the sentiment of being like, oh, beautiful, but that's like the state you're in, like a mood, that's what you need. You need to get yourself in a mood. Me telling you something generally ain't going to get you in any mood except for maybe annoyed. That's generally what happens when I talk to people. They're like, what? Why? A detailed discussion of the role of sentiment in aesthetic belief is beyond the scope of this paper, but for present purposes, it suffices to say that we know from first-person experience that our aesthetic judgments may diverge from our aesthetic sentiments in the absence of reliance on testimony. For instance, a person may, on the basis of a cognitive appraisal, judge that Virginia Woolf's novel have more literary merit than Conrad's, but nonetheless experience no positive aesthetic sentiments in reading Woolf and experience such sentiments in reading Conrad. Her own taste may, in this case, be lacking in her own estimation. That is, she may judge that someone who has a more positive aesthetic reaction to Woolf's writing as compared to Conrad's has a more refined taste. I conclude that an appeal to sentiment does not suffice to show that pessimism is the winning position. Yeah, I mean, you can like your trashy, like, romance novels. You may love your trashy romance novels, and you may know that, like, there are better writers out there than your trashy romance novels, but that's the one that you really like, because that one gives you a good sentiment about, like, feeling whatever. And other books may not. But you can know the difference. Like, that's not a problem. Like, what's it called? I had a philosophy professor, my advisor. He would read, silly murder mysteries or whatever, and he even said in class one day, he's like, don't read these, they're terrible, but I like them, they're fun. So it's like, guilty pleasures, as was said earlier today. So, but you can tell, like, the sentiment, just because it gives you a mood you like, does not mean that you don't understand that other things are better in, like, some abstract sense. Okay, in the course of responding to an optimist's objection, Hopkins offers another reason to prefer pessimism. It has to do with an alleged tendency we have to discard other people's testimony about an object once we have first-hand experience of said object. I think Hopkins' suggestion on this score fails, but the failure is instructive, and it will take us to the heart of what, in my view, pessimists get wrong. The objection Hopkins is responding to is the following. It seems perfectly acceptable, optimists argue, to form probabilistic beliefs on the basis of testimony and to rely on testimony making choices, for instance, in deciding what movie to see. How is the pessimist to explain that? And so now we got Ivan Neal. You should be very happy that basically they're arguing that testimony is a reason to form probabilistic beliefs on the basis of testimony right there. So this is sort of a very standard good view. Like, someone tells you something, well, that gives me reason to believe, a credence that there is better than zero, that it's worth watching. In Hopkins' view, there we go. Which one is this? This is Russell. Who's Russell? I can't see the face on that, but it's something Russell. Yeah. Trying to figure out who that is. I can't see, though. Bertrand Russell, but, like, is it what's it called? Is there an actor there? Not Bertie Russell. It's not like what's it called? A mix of. Jesus, this is what happens to me. Names start to die on me when I've been, like, streaming too long. Nick Cage Russell. It's not Nick Cage Russell, is it? Oh, it's just Russell. Okay. Because I know you got your Nick Cage Descartes. In Hopkins' view, the unusability pessimist has no trouble in accommodating this type of case actually. There is a good practical reason to rely on testimony provisionally, and aesthetic norms license such provisional reliance. Hopkins writes, quote, there are many films showing at any one time, some no doubt worth seeing, others not. Assuming I want to see a film at all, how am I to choose which to go? There's also a Sylvester Stallone Descartes. That's fantastic, Brian. If I remain agnostic about the merits of each of them, then I must either not go to the cinema at all or choose one at random. The first The former is perverse given my desire to see a movie. The latter is risky given the quality of what's on offer usually varies considerably. Agnosticism, then, is not a genuine option, but nor is investigating the matter for myself. That would require me to see all the films to find out which is the most worth seeing. And while I have the time and the desire to see one film, I have neither the time nor the desire to see them all. In sum, since I can neither remain agnostic nor solve the matter for myself, the norm of use lapses. Mid-Journey did a great Dwayne Johnson, Isaac Newton. That's fantastic. Good to know. Yeah, you should have done like, is there anyone called the Apple, not the Rock? Because then you could have like an Apple Isaac Newton. Facebook link. Let's see this. Copy link. I mean, I am not logged in on anything on this computer, so I probably, if it requires anything, aha. Yeah, so it's close. And I bet you could like mold them even better so that they'd be Fiona Apple Newton. See, that would be kind of fun. What does The Rock do in the Bathroom Vipers? He Dwayne's his Johnson. Oh my god. That's bad. That's bad. But okay, well done, Vipers. Okay, so this is basically, see, here's the thing. You have to take people's aesthetic judgments seriously, otherwise you will never be able to go see a movie you've never seen before. Like, how do you decide among many options? Okay, so the proponent of the requirement can explain why we rely on recommendations in making choices. However, the optimist on Hopkins' view cannot explain what happens later, namely that once we have seen the movie and our friend's judgment no longer matters. Hopkins writes, any force my friend's recommendation has for me is purely pro tempore. Once I've seen the film for myself, her view should count for nothing in my assessment of it. Ivan says, I just listened to the guy with the deep voice narrating the trailer. Yeah, good enough. But the case Hopkins is focusing on here cannot support pessimism over what I've suggested is a plausible version of optimism, namely the view that we have a reason to defer to people more qualified to judge than we are. A friend, unless stipulated otherwise, and Hopkins makes no such stipulation, is generally not such a person. If I have no good reason to think that my friend is more qualified to judge than I am, then on the version of optimism I wish to defend, there's no good reason to defer either. When we solicit recommendations from friends, we generally do that simply because they think we are likely to enjoy what our friends enjoy. This is the thing. This is what we were saying earlier. Someone was saying earlier where they get recommendations from their friends because their friends know what they like. That's part of it. In a world long ago. Yeah. Actually, I heard one of those guys that famous for that. He died a few years ago. There was one guy that did a lot of them. I think he passed away, which is kind of sad. But it was very his In a World Long Ago was very recognizable. Okay, yeah. So this is the thing. People can tell you it's good, and they don't need to tell you why it's good, but they can know who you are. They can know something interesting about you. You can get job recommendations. Hey, why don't you go into this profession? And there's nothing they can tell you about that because you've never done it before, but they might know you might like it because of how you are and how the world is. There's a great movie called In a World. So there's more to people recommending stuff than, I think the author is here saying basically, when someone recommends something, it's not always just an abstract reason it's got beauty to it. It's that you will find it beautiful because of the way you are and the way the art is. You're going to appreciate the art. So it's not just an abstract statement. It's more of a recommendation is more of a statement about you when it's recommended to you by someone you know. It's like reading a guidebook is different as compared to reading when a friend tells you, go see this movie, you're going to like it. I remember what was called Fight Club. A buddy of mine had never seen Fight Club, and he said, hey, someone said I should watch Fight Club, and he was like, "What do you think?" I was like, "Oh, you should watch it. You should like it." And I told him like a few things, like don't read anything about it. Like if you can just go in blind. And then I said some other recommendations to go like look at in the movie. I said just like pay attention to this, pay attention to that. It'll matter later on. And like I see him later that night. This is many years ago now, and he was like super pumped up. He was like, "That was the greatest movie! Oh my god, thank you for the recommendation." I was like, "Yeah." I didn't tell him anything about the movie, but like he really liked it because like it was his kind of movie. So, haven't not thought about that guy in a long time. Not great friends, just an acquaintance, really. Okay. If we were interested not in what we are going to enjoy, but in the proper aesthetic evaluation of a movie's qualities, we would seek the testimony of people more qualified to judge than we are, such as movie critics. The question for Hopkins then is this. Suppose a person is genuinely interested in the aesthetic properties of an object and consults those those people in a better position to judge. She then experiences the work for herself. Is it then true that the testimony of the person better suited to judge should come off to count for nothing? I don't think so, and Hopkins' argument does not show otherwise. Viper says there's also a philosopher of art, Dennis Dutton's Darwinian theory of beauty that supposes art signals fitness of the creator. Extending that, I imagine our changing aesthetic preferences are because we need from others change throughout life. I'm sure there is something that like art can continue to benefit us throughout life, but that doesn't always take away from old art. Like you can still find old art beautiful. And do you actually think that anyone cares about the fitness of say, who made the Mona Lisa? See, I blank on names, like I said, over time. But like Leonardo da Vinci, does anyone actually think that people are still looking at the Leonardo da Vinci Mona Lisa because it signals Da Vinci's fitness? Maybe people make stuff to show off. I mean, that's like an old theory. It's called peacocking, like where you're trying to show off all like the fancy tail that you have, and that's why you make art. But like it doesn't seem that's why we appreciate the Mona Lisa. Yeah, so there'd be a disconnect there. It does show skill, but you can show skill in multiple ways. You don't need to be making art to show skill. Like you can, do lots of things. Like you can just be really good at your job and make a lot of money in a capitalist society, and you'd be like, look, I made all this money being a capitalist in a society. Now that's not art, that's being a capitalist. I'm not even saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it showed the skill that you were able to do something other people were not able to do in a society. Girls like skills, Napoleon Dynamite. Yeah. So that's the thing. It's like that is a way. I'm not disagreeing, but I'm like saying, is that really the basis of like aesthetic everything? It seems not to be. It's like maybe that's how some people show skill, but like yeah. Thank you for the link. Yeah, because I'm sure people will like it is a good topic. So it's like it is an interesting way to do it. Like if you want an evolutionary explanation, this is a good way of going about it. It sounds right. Like why we do stuff signals what we're doing. This is one of the reasons I write papers. Is like I want people to say, hey, look, guy knows what he's talking about, like, or he has a good point. I like that idea about that. Why I do some philosophy is that not like really why I stream on Twitch, but like when I like write papers, it's like, do I want, like, I do it because I think people might find it interesting, and I'd be like, hey, look, they know that someone out there done something kind of interesting, and I like that idea that, my name's on it and whatever. Like, that would be nice, get a little recognition for having written a nice paper. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, 2010. And, well, you see, Vipers, if you can't remember what you liked about it, how do you know it's aesthetically good? Just because it's length? Yes. If it's long, does that imply better? Good question. Longer, always better. Yeah. Very hard question to answer sometimes. I'm going to stop right there. All right. Yeah, see, you're a stoner. You don't trust your own brain. This is the question, though. The author here says you can, because you're not that different from when you were back in the day. Are you really that different? Yeah. Oh, I got like a wanky, angry. Oh, Dan M. No. Emote on me. Oh dear. Okay, but yeah. So what was I saying? Okay, yeah, we're down here. Yeah, so someone who's knowledgeable's opinion does count for something. You have to be able to take a less angry, more no. Yeah, okay. Yeah, the Dan giggle. I always get myself into these troubling things. It's not even like I do have to censor myself, but whatever. It's just not worth continuing that joke. So here's the thing. You still have to, even if you have your own opinion, you can still say, why did the expert think one way over another? You don't get to just discard an expert opinion. This is not the United States, where you can be like, experts are stupid. Thus, while the requirement has advantages over the acquaintance principle, Hopkins does not demonstrate that it has advantages over optimism of the kind I favor. I conclude that none of the general arguments for pessimism on offer succeed. Yeah, I mean, you can't ignore smart people just because you don't like their opinion. That would be bad. Like if someone's saying smart things and you're like la 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 la, yeah, then you're a jackass. All right, so the strongest motivation for pessimism, however, comes from the intuitions about cases. If optimism about aesthetic testimony is to come out victorious, it must be supplemented with the satisfactory account of pessimist intuitions. This is the task I turn to presently. All right, so not in our interest. Sometimes pessimists appeal to cases in which we refuse to defer to people of no more qualified to judge than we are. Ivan says, I guess the motivation for all this is that the expert opinion is a very unreliable predictor. It's not useless statistically, however. Yeah, I think you can put it in those terms. Like that might be the upshot, but like I guess this is philosophy. The philosophers want to hear why everyone else is wrong. It's not enough for you to be right. You have to explain why everyone else is wrong quite often in philosophy, and that's really what the author has been doing in the last like 2 sections. So it's like, why can't we ignore expert testimony? Well, because the argument's here. So it might be very unreliable, but it is not completely unreliable, and so you do have to take it seriously. Okay, earlier we saw Hopkins doing that and arguing that we should discount a friend's judgment of a movie once we have seen the movie for ourselves. The variety of optimism I wish to defend, remember, is optimism about the testimony of those more qualified to judge than we are. Aesthetic testimony, I suggest, is akin to expert testimony. You cannot defer to a randomly chosen person's judgment. The test case for pessimism is this. I have a strong, perhaps compelling reason to think that someone else is more qualified to judge than I am, and yet it is inappropriate for me to defer to that person. Yeah, see, here's a good example, I think. If there was a wine critic, I'm not a wine expert. If someone says this wine is better than that wine, I won't be able to tell. I might say they both taste great, or I might not like one or the other. But like that doesn't make them wrong, and I should, if I thought about it, I could tell why that what the differences between them were. Now maybe I can't tell that the differences are interesting, but I should be able to tell the differences because my tongue works okay. Like I can taste the flavor. Yeah, small yay. That's right. So like in that case, I can really say, all right, I don't have a very refined palate, but I could be more refined. So like even like you can move this into like food even, where you could say, hey, this person really knows something and it's like well beyond what I can do. But like that's interesting. On a related topic, one of my streamer friends who's a Minesweeper streamer, CJ from NJ, her boyfriend has just like he could be like a sommelier. Like we were out drinking like whiskeys or something, and like we were having like a little whiskey tour, and he could figure out what the review says, the book review would say about whiskeys. He could say this flavor, this flavor, this flavor, and that would be what was in the book. Like he could just do it naturally. So he's like studying to be an engineer. I was like, if they're going to pay you to get drunk, you might want to try that out too. But like, I mean, who am I to tell him not to be an engineer, but still. But like he could just do that. Viper says, does the existence of Gordon Ramsay make greasy 1 a.m. pizza less tasty? No, of course not. But like, you already know it's greasy and nasty at 1 a.m. Like, that's okay though. And I'm sure Gordon would tell you so, but like, you know that. Like, you're not even disagreeing. Like, he's going to tell you that it's nasty, and you're going to be like, yeah, but I still like it. Okay. Brian says, I don't know about Ramsey, but I think Anthony Bourdain would be all in favor. Exactly. See, opinions disagree. Yeah, Tony's from here. Like, he's from New York. He would know about that. You like your pizza like you like your women. What, you don't have it? You don't get any? Yeah, you don't like pizza. Oh, that's sad. Well, I thought you did like pizza and women. But okay, maybe not. You're free to like whatever you like. Out of your reach. I thought you were going to go like out of reach. On the face of it, yeah, it's like one of those, like, I like my women like I like my coffee. Scalded. Like, terrible jokes and stuff. But, like, I was wondering where you were going. I apologize for that. Listen to the experts, Viper. Yes. Do not listen to Evolve Yourself. He is lying to you. On the face of it, such is the case with Wynn's Iris's example mentioned at the start. I may not have good reason to think my teacher is much more qualified to judge than I am. It depends on who my teacher is. But I likely have a good reason to believe my teacher is more qualified. Here with the spoon in them. Hey, what's up, Valpo? How you doing? Frank Big Time says, my embarrassing food is Slim Jim pepperoni sticks. I know exactly how disgusting they are, but I still love them. Exactly. You can do that. Like, you know, like a little sweet and a little dark, like all the stupid bad jokes with like coffee. I don't know. You don't like the taste of red sauce inside both. Snap it to a Slim Jim. Yeah. If non-Americans, a Slim Jim is a spiced dried meat stick that comes in like this plastic casing. So it's basically like been sitting in a this is what now I'm losing, a gas station market for any amount of time. Like, who knows? It's just been sitting in like, you know, hazy, like fluorescent lights for years, and then you go and you eat it, and it's just been sitting there. Yes, mechanically separated chicken. What's up, Valpo? Like, how you doing? We're talking about reasons for believing epistemic testimony. Not epistemic, aesthetic testimony. So should you take someone's word for it if saying something's beautiful? And the author here is arguing that usually a lot of times people say, no, you have to decide for yourself if something is aesthetically pleasing or not. But they're saying, look, if an expert has given you a reason to believe that something is, then you have to take them seriously. Viper says, but these are all examples of enjoying something but thinking you shouldn't due to consensus. Others' opinion doesn't matter when it comes to taste, really? No, of course not. But again, I think what the point about Anthony Bourdain was that Bourdain would recognize the goodness in some of these sort of pleasure foods. And so Bourdain was, you know, he would go eat all the things and go see what people liked about them. He would learn the culture that was associated with, you know, like different foods that other people might not like. And so there is still value in like Slim Jims. But I was trying to describe how nasty Slim Jims to our non-US people, because I suspect you don't have Slim Jims in other parts of the world. But like, that's the whole point, is that they are good. They have a goodness to them, and that's why they get sold all over the United States. Like, they are kind of like this salty, tasty, dried meat. Brian Random says, fake summer sausage with equal part preservatives. Yeah, they must be purchased at gas stations. Exactly. But like, that's good. That's good. Frank says, every time I see mechanically separated chicken as an ingredient, I imagine a gigantic centrifuge. Yeah, meat slurry. It's what it is. It's like pieces of meat with salt and flavoring, and, you know, it's fantastic sometimes when you want it. It really is. So, Viper says it's American chocolate that the rest of the world can't understand. That's fair. Like, our chocolate is, you know, made differently, and you grow up on it, so you're good. Ivan says, I ate a Hostess apple pie every day at lunch in high school. That's something. I mean, yeah, I mean, they're okay. Yeah, chocolate. I mean, I don't know if British chocolate's really that much better. Probably go to, like, Switzerland or something. Like, proper chocolate. I'm jealous of the Daniel Matt sometimes. Good chocolate. Frank says, yeah, American chocolate is objectively bad. What's what? Yeah. Well, people make it slightly differently, and it's, you know, tastes slightly different. It's like, I'm used to American chocolate. I like it well enough. Clear. Yeah. All right, now I've started the chocolate wars. The Cadbury eggs and stuff. Oh my God. Frank says, but it's because they have supplied a lots of chocolate. A third, they have to supply lots of chocolate to a third of a billion people. It has to be shelf stable. Yeah, I mean that's a lot of our food. That's exactly why we also like Slim Jims, because that stuff is the same no matter when you get it. It's across the entire country. It's like half preservatives and half ground up God knows what meat. But like it's got its own little charm to it, and if you want a little bit of salty, tasty meat, you get a Slim Jim, and if you want like a Snickers bar, it's the same in New York or in like Portland, Oregon, on the other side of the country, or for probably in Hawaii for that matter. Yeah, I was overseas once, and I will go into a bar and I get a beer, and they're like, "Oh, we've got Sam Adams." Now, Sam Adams is brewed in New England, not very far away from New York, so it's basically a almost local beer. They were so excited that they had Sam Adams on. An American could drink their American beer in their bar. It was fucking nasty. Like I could tell it had been sitting on a goddamn boat for 3 weeks before it got there. It was fucking terrible. I would love some good chocolate, Ivan. That would be great. Yeah. So, but like that's the thing. It's kind of funny. It's like, how are you gonna actually transport beer overseas and have it be the same beer? It's not gonna be. And God knows, for all I know, they were making Sam Adams like in closer to where I was, and it didn't taste the same at all. I was like, yeah, it's great. Okay. Yeah. So this is the thing. If you have an expert and they have an expert opinion, you still got to take them seriously. Even if you dislike it, that doesn't make you right. Just because you dislike it doesn't mean your opinion is informed. You may not have a well-informed opinion. You know what you like, but that doesn't make you you may still be ignorant in that area. So being ignorant in that area does not make you wrong about if you like it or not. But it doesn't mean you are not saying you have nothing more than that to say. Okay. On the face of it, such is the case with Wynn's Iris's example mentioned at the start. I may not have a good reason to think that my teacher is much more qualified to judge than I am. It depends on who my teacher is, but I likely have good reason to believe my teacher is more qualified. Perhaps then this could be said to pose a challenge to my brand of optimism. Isn't it true that one should, in the case described, refuse to defer to one's painting teacher? The first thing to note is that there are aesthetic properties with regard to which one should quite obviously defer to those suitably positioned to pass judgment. Whisper? Don't know what that is. Yeah, I mean, here's one of the things. Like, if you go to college and you're paying a lot of money to get the teacher's opinion, you're paying a lot of money to do it. You should not be ignoring them, because why are you going to college then if you are going to college for, like, art? Consider the property of originality. Recognizing originality requires an acquaintance with the tradition. No one is in a good position to judge how original work of art is if he or she does not know enough about the preceding tradition. Such reliance, pace, unavailability, pessimism, does not violate any epistemic norms, but in addition, pace, usability, pessimism, it does not violate any non-epistemic norms concerning aesthetic practice either. You're applying to Cadbury, Mew keyword. Yeah, your keyword. Okay. What about other properties such as beauty, though? It is here that pessimists may feel on safer intuitive ground. Yeah, because like if you're talking about originality, that could be like objectively what has been done in the past. But beauty still seems like something you personally have to judge. Pessimist intuitions, I wish to argue, can be traced back to an overlooked fact of aesthetic life. It is often not in our interest to defer to others. This is the claim I will argue for now. Okay, so author is saying they're making a new claim here. It is not in our interest to defer to others. Why? Peeps violate aesthetic norms, says Brandon. I think people know that. They have to say more than that. Just that other than people being wrong is yeah, we know people are wrong though. But like, why is that overlooked? All right, let's see what the author says. In aesthetic life, we often have goals other than that of forming correct aesthetic beliefs. Indeed, our primary goal usually is to find things we enjoy and avoid things we dislike, and we have an interest in achieving that goal. Oh, so they that's all they're gonna say. We'll have to see. Viper says, surely expertise only enables the expert to explain why they like something, but it doesn't make their taste more valid than someone who just likes something. Yeah, but you can also you can miss what you like, you can miss what's good about something too, though. So you may dislike something or you may like something, but you can like it for the wrong reasons, or you can like it for reasons that are separate from why other people like it. And once you understand why other people like it, then you too can appreciate why you like it. It's like maybe you're just missing something. And so it's like why they like it may be more than just why they like it. And maybe that a lot of people like it for that reason. And now we're going back to the sociological reason that we were talking about earlier, that there is something interesting about it, but you don't always, you have to put the sufficient time and effort in sometimes to find it. Might not be the easiest thing. Like, some people are like, Dark Souls is a very hard game and they don't like it because it's too difficult. But it's like if you put the time and effort in, then you might like Dark Souls because, a lot of people, once they put the time and effort in, they find something they like about it. So like if an expert tells you should play Dark Souls, maybe you have to put the time and effort in. Ivan says, another thing clouding the issue is difficult to be an expert on something you do not appreciate. Yeah. Absolutely. But that's why you defer to experts, so that you can gain some appreciation of a topic. So like, in video games, maybe you don't like Souls games. They're just like hard and they're complicated. But you can talk to someone who does like them and they can explain what you have to do a little bit, and maybe you can get into it after a bit. Maybe. Like, that does happen. People are like, I don't like Souls games. Then Elden Ring came out and they found a way that, now you do like Souls games, because Elden Ring is a Souls game, basically. Maybe there's ways they made it a little easier, a little less complex, or whatever they did. But now all of a sudden, you find out you like these, what were called very hard games, but like you just needed to understand it in the right way. Okay, so we also have an interest in maintaining a positive view of our own abilities. So this is just saying we like to be right. Alright, so deferring to others may interfere with all of these goals. Finding out what we enjoy, enjoying it, and maintaining a positive view of our own taste and critical abilities. By taste here, I mean the disposition to have positive aesthetic sentiments in response to the aesthetically meritorious, and by critical abilities, the capacity to discern aesthetic merit. Why would deference interfere with these goals? I will begin with the last goal. If you defer to another, you are thereby acknowledging that your own critical abilities are inferior to those of another. This may be a price well worth paying if you want to cultivate your taste further, but if you do not, there may be no sufficient corresponding benefit. One can argue that there is a tacit acknowledgement of this sort in many cases of deference, particularly those in which I and others have the same descriptive information, yet we do not refuse to defer on other matters, such as cosmology or statistics. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things. If it's like objective, like, statistics. There are two things to say in response. First, in most cases, we do not actually have all the descriptive information that the people we deferred to do, so we can tell ourselves that if we studied the relevant subjects and acquired said information, we wouldn't have to defer. Second, and more importantly, even if we do not think that, most of us do not aspire to the status of qualified arbiters of cosmological debates or debates over the proper use of statistics. Most people, however, don't want to think of themselves as unable to discern aesthetic properties and critically evaluate them. I cannot here take up the question of why that is so, but I think the evidence that we have it is so compelling. Yeah, people don't want to think that they have bad taste and stuff. But I'm not so sure about this. Basically, people might say, I have good enough taste. And maybe that's why they don't want to defer. They don't care. They know there's other people more sophisticated. They don't need to do it. And that's fine. That's what they're saying over here, that you don't need to be an expert about stuff. Like, it doesn't matter. You're not trying to be an expert. So that's fine. And so, like, the fact that you're ignoring them is because I don't need that extra level of information. I'm good. What I have is good enough for me anyway. Okay. Things stand similarly with our view of our own taste. We don't like to think our taste is deficient. Hume already noted this. Of the self and of the standard of taste, he writes, quote, One obvious cause, which many feel not the proper sentiment of beauty, is the want of that delicacy of imagination which is requisite to convey a sensibility of those finer emotions. This delicacy everyone pretends to. End quote. Yeah, so you don't want to pretend like you can't see what's hot. But if we defer, we risk having to conclude that we don't have the delicacy of imagination we pretend to, and our taste is deficient, since it is quite possible that we don't at all enjoy what our best testimony suggests is meritorious. We may, in order to avoid that conclusion, put pressure on ourselves to like what we believe meritorious. This, however, interferes with another goal of aesthetic practice, finding out what we enjoy. And in addition, it interferes with the goal of enjoying what we are disposed to enjoy, since if we acquire the belief that what we enjoy is aesthetically worthless and that we are taking pleasure and it shows an unrefined taste, our pleasure may be spoiled. Yeah, it's like the person says, don't spoil my fun. I know this is campy and stupid, but I like it. It's like, don't spoil my fun. It's like, I know it's trashy romance novel. I don't care. Let's see. Okay, I missed a comment or two. Another, blah, blah, blah. It's difficult to be an expert on something you don't appreciate. Yeah, but we're going into that. Viper says, but in your example, that opinion didn't change because of a third-party advice, but rather the individual's hedonic experience of the art. I forgot what I was saying, but I think you're right. Whatever it was. I'm starting to lose my, because it's over 2 hours now. Brain is starting to collapse. But like, here's the thing, yeah. It's like, yeah, you're not changing because of what somebody else says, you're doing it, yeah. Oh, the Souls games. No. Oh, the Souls games? Well, you could say, look, the person might point out what you should go do, and then you might realize why you like it. So, your opinion, once you know what you're doing, might be better. Like, say, hey, look, go over here and do this sort of stuff. And then you say, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. If I do over here and I play in this way, maybe then like you will start to appreciate. And yes, so the point is that you can't ignore the expert testimony, but with the expert testimony, then you get your hedonic experience of the art. So they go in hand, is what I was arguing. Okay. Some people try to get themselves out of the bind by adopting the belief that their own aesthetic responses do reflect aesthetic merit without putting pressure on themselves to consume what they believe meritorious. For instance, a person might think of herself as someone who loves Bergman and Tarkovsky, while in fact she has not seen almost any movies by those directors, despite having multiple opportunities, and instead watches popular TV shows. This way forward generates cognitive dissonance. We are bound to notice that though we think of ourselves as people who enjoy some kind of art, such art does not figure prominently in our aesthetic lives. Viper says, yeah, but you equally might not like it despite giving it a chance. I don't know about equally, but yeah, of course, the expert can be wrong that you don't like it anyway. Like 100% they could be wrong. But the point is you can't ignore them. And if you do what they say and you can appreciate you appreciate what they say, then yeah, they could still be wrong, but you did learn something about what other people said. You still have to take it seriously because they do know what they're talking about, being a video game critic maybe. That doesn't make it for you, of course, but like, you just don't get to ignore them because you had one bad experience. It's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, if you have a bad experience, that doesn't make that the last experience you could have with it. So, okay. So yeah, so you can have dissonance. The author's saying now is like, yeah, you could say, oh, that's great art, but I don't watch it. But then you're getting cognitive dissonance. We are bound to notice that though we think of ourselves as people who enjoy some kind of art, such art does not figure prominently in our aesthetic lives. Sometimes people resort to various self-persuasion techniques in those cases, telling themselves, for instance, that they'd engage with different types of art if only they had more time or were in a more robust state of mind, and so on. But this strategy is cumbersome and clearly not ideal. We are generally better off simply refusing to defer altogether. The important point here, however, is that deference is not inappropriate, either epistemically or in some other normative sense. It is simply prudentially inadvisable, at least often. Yeah, it's like basically, you just want to go home and you want to chill out. You don't want to go have to think more. Like I know a lot of people. They come on Twitch. They don't want to think. Like, you just want to go watch, a dumb game and get a few laughs. Perfectly acceptable use of your time. Yeah, I mean, everyone raised their hand in like chat. Things change if something of import to other people hinges on getting things right. For instance, if a person must, like Miss Beaver, decide whether to encourage a student to pursue a career as a violinist, it then becomes quite appropriate to defer. Yeah, so again, why are you consuming the art matters. For the most part, then, we are not concerned with aesthetic truth, but with our own aesthetic interests. When we do try to determine the truth about the aesthetic properties of an object, this is generally for two reasons. First, we may expect that knowing the truth will help us refine our own taste. We may want to know what objects are like to give us exquisite pleasures if we put in the time and effort. Second, something may hinge on passing a correct judgment, as in Ms. Beaver's case, or in that of a person who serves on a literary prize committee. It is not surprising that our goal is generally something other than truth about beauty and other aesthetic properties. There may be cases in which knowing the truth about something, while not of immediate practical concern, enriches our understanding of the world or benefits us in some other way. This is what I was saying. You can listen to a game critic. That doesn't mean you want to go play a sophisticated, very difficult game, but like you can listen to them and say, hey, maybe when I do ever get around to it, it'll be worth it. For instance, it may be worth learning something about the nature of space and time, even without any tangible practical benefit. However, seriously trying to determine whether some particular novel is good or some painting is beautiful when I judge that I'm unlikely to enjoy said novel or painting may not be in my interest. Yeah, why are you wasting your time doing stuff you don't want to do? Don't do that. Nor is it in my interest to acquire beliefs that cast doubt on my own critical abilities unless I'm trying to cultivate my own taste. I wish to note that the account just presented has resonances with an account developed by John Robson. According to Robson, we refuse to defer to those more qualified to judge, not because we should refuse, but because we have a tendency to have an inflated view of our own capacities, as we do of other abilities and positive attributes. Yeah, so our ego gets in the way. Now, is that a bad thing? Yes, sometimes. Sometimes it's not. You don't always have to be humble, like all day, all the time. Like, oh, everyone knows more than me. Nah. Screw it. Robson means this as a debunking explanation of the pessimist thesis that we must refuse to defer to the judgments of other people. So he's saying, look, you're just being egotistical if you're saying we don't have to. It's because you think you're better than you are. Author says, I agree that we have a tendency to self-aggrandize, but as I argue here also, deference to others can interfere with legitimate aesthetic interests such as finding out what we really enjoy and enjoying it. It is not generally important to get things right in the aesthetic domain, particularly when our aesthetic beliefs concern only us, and the ability to pursue our aesthetic interests is important. It is important to get things right in a case such as Miss Beaver's, but that is not the typical case. Yeah, so it's like, you should be looking at what you enjoy and investigating that. There's too much art out there to consume that you should spend it doing stuff that you are academically interested in. Like you should be academically got the seal of approval versus something that actually you want to be doing. There's just too much stuff to be doing, and that's why if someone says, oh, don't look at that, look at this is so much more interesting, it's like, no, I don't have time to learn all of that. I just want to learn this, and I'm going to learn more about this stuff that I like because I already like it. And you can go down a different road than other people do, and that's okay too. Okay, so while I think pessimists are wrong to suppose that we ought not defer, I think also that simply debunking our autonomy impulse as Robson does won't do either. There's at least an excuse and perhaps often a good epistemic prudential justification for refusal to defer, though generally there is no normative reason. Okay, so yeah, you don't have to defer to somebody else. You can be doing your own thing. And alright, so this is the grand result of this paper, because this is the conclusion right here. The author's saying, do your thing. You be you. You don't always have to defer to other people. But if you are not trying to just be you, do your own thing, then yeah, you do have to listen to what other people say. It's like in the cases where you're just having a good time and being you, don't listen to other people, just enjoy yourself. That's a fine thing. Maybe not the craziest of again, papers like this, good paper, seems to be reasonably well argued. I wasn't being oh, this argument's wrong, this screwed this up, this is weird over here. This is fine. This person's competent philosopher, but it's saying, look, if in aesthetic areas you have space to go it on your own and enjoy what you want to enjoy, and that's fine. Viper says, I think it's all down to social expectation rather than quality. The British Film Institute's once-a-decade Sight and Sound poll recently voted 1975's Jean Dielman 23 Street, Brussels, as the best movie of all time. One thing I noticed is that one of the first people to vote in 2002 was a critic named Mark Cousins, who in 2011 released a hugely influential 15-hour documentary, The Story of Film and Odyssey. In 2012, the number of votes shot up to 34, reaching number 1 in 2022. Okay. Yeah, so it's like, this is the thing. It's like, you're going to be getting these other people's opinions. And once it's a social expectation, why should you be just going with the social expectation of going what's good? I think that's right. But again, these critics do tend to know something. You don't want to say they're all just, making it up for themselves. I mean, because they're just saying everything's just a fad. And I don't think that's fair to the critics either. I mean, they know that, like, certain things come and go. And I don't think they all think of what they're doing as a fad. I mean, it might be, but... Yeah, so it's like, that's the question. Is it just social, or is there something of worth in general about art then? Like, are you claiming then that, Jean Dielman is pretentious as fuck? Maybe so. But, like, that doesn't make... I mean, this is one of those, like, that's an ad hominem. That doesn't make them a bad film person. A lot of people in, like, film are pretentious and, like, arrogant people. That doesn't always make them bad or good, whatever. But it's just like, all right, yeah, you don't want to deal with them because they're pretentious as fuck. That's fine. But, like, again, that doesn't make them wrong about theater or movies. And I'm actually on the side where just because you don't like them as a person means you can ignore what they say. But, I mean, in this context, as an expert, you cannot ignore what they're saying if you are looking for expert advice. You can't just be like, well, I don't care what you say. No, you cannot care what they say if you are looking to enjoy yourself. You have to care what they say if you're, like, looking to find out what's good in some sort of grander sense than what you are just doing with yourself. Okay, so here's the conclusion. This is, it's about a page. I argued that deference is neither epistemically inappropriate nor inappropriate in some other way. A version of optimism about deference to aesthetic testimony succeeds. However, pessimists' intuitions point to a real feature of aesthetic life. It is just that pessimists misdiagnose its source. It is often not a good idea to defer because deference may spoil our pleasure, undermine our attempts to find out what we enjoy, force us to adopt an unflattering view of our aesthetic capacities, and create cognitive dissonance. There is something else to be said for a refusal to defer. Such refusal may help counter a peculiar aesthetic vice, the vice of snobbery. Oh, okay. So now we've got one more thing coming in. Don't be a snob. I take snobbery to be a tendency to tie one's aesthetic judgments to considerations of social status. This involves deference for the wrong reasons, not because you think someone else's aesthetic judgment is more likely to be correct, but for reasons such as social status. The snob wants to be perceived as high class by mimicking the taste of others. A person who is reluctant to defer in general is unlikely to defer for reasons of status, and to the extent it is unlikely to become a snob. Okay, so yeah, you'd be like, oh, I like my own opinions. That's cool. You're not just trying to, virtue signal as got brought up earlier, or just be a snob. This should give no sense of triumph to pessimists, however, and that for two reasons. Viper says it's a form of gatekeeping, like just due to the rise in education of the middle class in the early 20th century, academic work became increasingly impenetrable. James Joyce's Ulysses, for example. Sure, that's fair. But I think that's exactly what the author is getting at here with the snobbery. It's gatekeeping because, like, this is like the smart view, and they're becoming a snob. And I think that's that's right. Okay, so first, refusals to defer may in turn be a result of snobbery, like you thinking, okay, I know better than you because I have the right opinion about things. The This may be particularly troubling for the pessimist when, for instance, one refuses to defer to someone more qualified to judge because one believes deference would detract from one's social status. Second, and relatedly, one can defer for the right reasons and without becoming a snob, so the danger of snobbery does not ground a normative reason to refuse to defer. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, you have to take the expert seriously, but you can't just be like, I'm picking and choosing the high class opinions, because that's weird. Okay. There is a final point I wish to make before closing this discussion. There may be cases in which deference is not only prudentially but epistemically inadvisable. Those are cases in which the verdict of a person I deem more qualified judge seems utterly baffling to me. Yeah, so this is the nonsense thing. You just don't understand what they're talking about. Like this is when the expert is just like, you don't understand them, or they're confused. Consider the reaction of some viewers to an exhibit of a pile of bricks in the Tate Gallery. In such cases, it may be epistemically virtuous and not only prudentially advisable to refuse to defer. Some people may be too easily baffled. Of course, a senior academic was once heard saying that no one could possibly enjoy opera and that everyone is claiming to do so is pretending. But if this is so, couldn't one argue that a modest version of pessimism succeeds after all? I don't think so. One way to resist this conclusion is to argue that deference in such cases is simply psychologically impossible, and that therefore refusal to defer is not epistemically virtuous. This is not the line I wish to take because first, deference may be for some psychologically possible, and second, a state may be epistemically virtuous even if it is opposite to its opposite is psychologically impossible. Consider we may be psychologically unable to believe more paradoxical statements, that is, it's raining and it's not raining, but disbelieving such statements is generally rational to the extent disbelieving such statements is generally rational and to that extent epistemically virtuous. Yeah, so the more paradox is saying it's raining and it's not raining right now. So it's raining and it's raining and I don't believe it. So you already know it's raining, and then you say, I don't believe it. So it's raining, and I don't believe it. So maybe you can't really think this sort of statement. Now, if like a expert were to say such a thing, and they're saying about some art, you say, look, I don't get it. And, you know, the difference is like, okay, maybe you just don't have enough background information to understand what they're saying. That's fine. But like, that means you have to do, like, either they have to be clearer or you have to do some more work. But like, there's no reason to, you don't have to take their word for it because they could be wrong or whatever. It's like not worth your time to go figure it out. Okay, author says, my own response is this. Optimism is fully compatible with limits on deference of this sort. Compare an optimist about perceptual testimony says we can believe a person who tells us that it is raining. But an optimist need not say we should believe a person who says it's raining cucumbers, however reliable the informant. Some things one shouldn't believe if they are asserted by Cato. An optimist can endorse this view without losing her optimist credentials. Okie dokie, done. Alright, so basically, like I said, okay paper. I know this person. I'm not just trying to be nice to them. Like I said, I haven't seen them since I was in college many years ago. So, like, I don't really have any skin in this game. But basically they're arguing, look, yes, in matters of taste that only matter to you, then you choose what you want to like. If you want to have matters of taste that have anything else besides your pure enjoyment of it, then you have to actually, have some deference for what other people say, especially experts. Like if your friend tells you something, you can, disregard it if you think they're wrong. But if an expert says it, you have to kind of like say, well, there might be more to it that I'm missing. Now, of course, at the end, they were saying, look, the expert could be wrong or saying nonsense and you don't have to believe them. But like, okay, there's just too much of a gap between you and the expert. Not a big deal. You still have to like appreciate that the expert said such a thing. Now, there's lots of reasons, like you could be saying, nah, I can ignore people because I have the right opinions, and then you're just a snob, or you're trying to social climb, or gatekeep, or all these other things that could happen. So Viper's hard to disagree. I mean, this is what the author argues, is saying, look, you have to at least take other people's expert opinions into account. I don't see why that's crazy. I mean, maybe, yeah, I could say, I don't see why it's a hard disagree. I think, like, you could soft disagree very easily. Like, yeah, like, who's the expert really in aesthetic judgments? Like, who? Like, really, what is an expert? Like, art critic? Art critics disagree all the time. Viper says, expert opinion often isn't motivated by pure criticism. Fair. But, like, you'd have to still look at what they're saying. Like, maybe they're wrong, maybe they're not, maybe they are saying smart things. I mean, of course, like, say political commentators, they are often biased, like massively biased. So you look at politics. Now, should you take someone's opinion that's like, oh, that's serious? It's like, well, we know they're biased, and maybe you shouldn't, and you can feel free to ignore certain political commentators because how biased you think they are. So they're not giving pure political commentary; they're giving heavily biased political commentary, and that's fair. But I think like the author here is trying to limit it to like fine art. Now, could they be biased? Sure. Can they say smart things? Well, if you think they are and they are like honestly trying to be honest about that sort of stuff, then yeah, I mean you should at least I don't see why not. Why you shouldn't at least have the possibility that someone else knows something that you don't know about the art. And if they know something about the art and they say it's good, maybe it merits not a whole lot of extra work, but at least a second glance on something you didn't like. So I think that's what the author's saying. Now, again, is this a massive conclusion? It's like, hey, give it a second look. That's basically everything that's been concluded here. That was all. The whole thing is that if someone says, if something you don't like and someone says, hey, I'm an expert, you should give that a second chance, maybe you should give it a second chance. I mean, I'm not saying that if like someone says a certain food is good, but that food makes you want to hurl, that's not what you should be doing. Like there's no reason to make yourself sick, but like at least you can appreciate what other people might like about it, perhaps. But again, like art is probably not going to make you want to throw up, like fine art. Yeah. Viper says, look at film critics who get invited to advanced screenings by studios. They have an incentive to give the movie a good rating, so the studio will invite them back for further advanced screenings. Yeah, and this is like the news organizations that get interviews with big politicians because they give them softball questions that they can say whatever they want. Because if they don't treat the politician with deference, then they don't get any more interviews, and the rivals will, and their news station will look like crappy. So there's a lot of skullduggery going on. Sure. But I mean, that's like saying everything's nefarious too, and so you can't trust anyone ever, never, because all the things are nefarious. Sometimes, but I don't think all the things all the times are nefarious. Is one of the reasons I like this format is that if I'm being nefarious, it'd be very hard for me to be nefarious over like hours of talking about stuff. I mean, I could be very, very clever about all the things I say and skew them certain directions. But like I'm picking random papers. I take commentary from chat. I discuss things. It's like this is the sort of thing. It's like, am I being nefarious in my philosophical commentary here? I mean, that possibly, but it'd be very difficult. Yeah, Viper says, that's why I don't buy the notion that we should defer to potentially corrupt opinions. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, the author was arguing that do you always have the right not to defer? Like, or should you always never defer? Because experts don't know what they're talking about. And that seems a little bit too strong, and they're trying to make space for the thing. Says, hey, look, like, potentially corrupt does not mean necessarily corrupt. The man is nefarious. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah. I haven't thought about that movie in a while. But yeah. But like, yeah, that's the thing. Potentially corrupt does not mean necessarily corrupt. Maybe you can find some like people who are smart that are not terribly corrupt, and you can listen to their opinions, and they could even disagree with you, and then you might say, hey, that person that's usually not corrupt and usually says smart things has disagreed with me. Maybe I should give that a second look. And again, this is what happens in analytic philosophy. The end point gets smaller and smaller and smaller. You don't actually get a huge conclusion, but you can at least argue, say, hey, I can argue that you should look a second time. So, yeah. So, let's see. If I was going to do the rating system, I'm going to say, these are the emotes. What would I call this one? This one would actually get the knife, because it kind of the scalpel, which is the second emote over from the left, and then the little scream face, which is the third emote over, because it's kind of like existential aesthetic stuff. And let's see, was there anything else very interesting here? Not really. Like the Ouroboros I just think is cool, so I got the Ouroboros. That's the first one. Kind of looking at it now, and on the black background it's kind of hard to see, but it's not terrible. It's not navel gazing. Like this wasn't all like talking about like philosophy stuff that only philosophers care about. This was talking about movies. This was talking about like paintings. This was talking about food. So this is not just like navel gazing philosophy. So this would get a knife for, you know, doing the analytic thing, carving up the opponent's words, and then the scream. So, you need to get better TTV installed. Just Google it. It's a it makes a browser extension for all the major browsers, and yeah. And so like, but I do that so everyone can have access to seeing them, as opposed to doing it and then only like subscribers could do it. But if you install that, you're gonna have a much better time on a lot of channels on Twitch. A lot of channels on Twitch are going to you know, have better TV emotes. And so like that's the thing. If like you're going around, you see things like Sag, like yeah. So in a rating, what I'm thinking is like you can give it like, if it's something is really really good at analytics, you can give it like 3 or 4 knives. Like, so 3 or 4 scalpels, so that'd be like it really sliced and diced its opponents. Or you could like give it like 5 scream faces and like super existential. So like, yeah, you could give it like more or whatever else. So even if you give it 1, it means that. But then like if you give it more, you could say it means more. Like I wouldn't give this one the golden poop, which is the golden turd at the end, because basically this wasn't like trying to be all shiny and fancy on the outside and crap on the inside. This one was a little bit more modest, saying that. Now, did it have like really fun ideas? I don't think this was like super fun ideas. So no brain dance. Like it doesn't get the brain dance email. So you would give it a 2 out of 5. Yeah, but 2 out of 5 what's? Like maybe you could give it 2 out of the 5 Ouroboros, because Ouroboros is kind of like the generic old good ideas in philosophy. So yeah, so you'd give it like a 2 Ouroboros in general, and then the other ones are kind of more descriptive. Like the Ouroboros is like the old ideas. Yeah, 2 out of 5. So like it would get 1 scalpel, 1 like scream. These are not like giving it like 5s. These are giving it like a few little ratings here to give it a description on what you think that, like, is it a solid piece of writing? I mean, it got published. I wasn't like very angry with how it was going. It was fine. But then again, the points it was making were not like, these are not major points. Again, the grand conclusion was take a second look. If an expert says something is not the way you think it is. Yeah, so if you're rating a book and you have just one rating system, yeah, 2 out of 5, that's fine. I mean, yeah, people like the point scores because, sure. Like, you could give it, like, a bunch of vote yays. So you give it, like, 2 yays or whatever. Like, so this would be your overall vote here. 2 yays. But yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit more sophisticated with my rating system. So it won't get the navel. It won't get the brain dance. I didn't think anything was, like, super fun about the ideas here. It doesn't get the shrivel. Like, it didn't, like, over-promise and under-deliver. It never really promised a whole lot. It's not going to get the golden turd because, again, it wasn't shiny and then failed. It's just going to get, like, the scalpel and the existential. And that's it. And that's okay. Like, it's not a terrible paper. It's just, that's cool. So. But, like, that's the strategy here with the emotes.